New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Free my mind, open my heart with the whispers of truth. To live a conscious life, to live a conscious life on the growing edge. On the growing edge.
And now, here's Allie.
Good morning and welcome to Growing Edge Live with me, Allie Benjamin. I'm so glad to be here today, and welcome to you, whether you're watching live or watching this as a replay. I'm just thrilled to know that it's Monday again and I get to share some thoughts, some downloads, some uploads, and spiritual practices, Ask Allie, and also a special guest. So welcome, and I'm just wondering, where are you today and what are you doing? You can communicate through the chat, or if you're on Facebook, you can drop some comments there if you have something to say or to add to today's broadcast. I would love that. So Growing Edge Live is all about having conversations with soul-centered beings that are doing good works in the world, people from all walks of life that use and channel their energy and resources into uplifting and inspiring others and really bringing the world together in love. And so that's what I love about spiritual community, new thought, self-discovery, and all the things that we do when we're on our awakening journey. It's so good to know that there's so many resources. And here on New Thought Media Network, there is a ton of amazing shows, inspired luminaries and seekers and teachers that are lit up and on fire with spirit, that want to share their light and support others along this amazing journey of life that can be so challenging sometimes and so joyful. So here we are on the growing edge. The growing edge is where we are right now, on the growing edge of our own evolution, the very growth edge of our life. And what we're experiencing right now is the perfect thing for each of us to have going on for our soul's evolution and growth. So welcome. And I'd like to start with a little grounding breath meditation. So here we go. If you will, close your eyes and maybe place your hand on your heart and give yourself full permission to arrive, to be here at the very center of your own becoming. There's nowhere else to be and nothing else to do. So let's take a breath together, breathing in and exhaling. And as you arrive and settle and open, I trust and know that something you hear today supports you on your path. Something you experience today, hopefully a shift, a healing, a remembering, a realization, supports you in sparking your light and sharing your light abundantly with the world. So welcome to Growing Edge Live. So this is the portion of our broadcast where I take a question that's come in from one of our audience members and dive a little more deeply into it. And today I have a question from Michael. And he says, with respect to the Enneagram teachings, now the Enneagram is something that I'm studying these days, Why is there such a diverse group of therapists, counselors, and spiritual teachers using the Enneagram to help their clients process their trauma? Well, this is such a deep question. I could talk about it for a long time. But as I've thought about it and as I've sort of brought in the key things that I found, as I'm a pretty new student, a couple of years into studying the Enneagram and using it within my coaching and within my own life and my family and my relationships, I found there's some things that are so universal. The Enneagram is ancient wisdom. It isn't owned or exclusive to any religion or any kind of philosophy or group or organization. It seems to have been embraced by so many. So we do have religions. We've got therapists and counselors and coaches and businesses that use the wisdom of the Enneagram, which is a personality profiling system that helps individuals understand themselves more deeply. The Enneagram is a symbol, and you can look that up online and find it. And this symbol has been organized by teachers long ago to help us understand the different kinds of personalities that humans seem to fall into. And they've created 9 types, 9 main types. So the Enneagram, if you find a test or if you're having a discussion with an Enneagram teacher, they'll ask you to look at these 9 types. And there's explanations and descriptions of these 9 types. When you go a little deeper, there's also things such as subtypes. And so that opens up to an even broader, I think it's 27 types. And you, me, we fall into one of those. Now, how we fall into one of those types is based on exploring our childhood, the people around us, and the struggles that we went through at our earliest rememberings. And it's based on the struggles and the challenges and the family situation that we grew up in and the life situation that was going on that made our little self, our child self, adopt particular characteristics, strategies, in order to get our needs met, in order to feel loved. And so it's these coping mechanisms, these strategies that we develop as young ones that we then interact with the people around us, and we start to identify ourselves as these characteristics, maybe fearful, maybe sad, maybe there's all kinds of ways that we develop an understanding of who we are and how we see the world. And so the Enneagram helps sort this out. Now, some people say, well, personality profiling kind of puts you in a box. I don't want to live in a box. And if you're here watching this, you're probably one of those people that are open at the top. The box lid is open and you're open to all kinds of thoughts and ideas and philosophies and teachings. And so the idea of like going back into a box seems restrictive and limiting. Well, it's exactly the opposite. The Enneagram helps us understand the box that we've primarily been living within unconsciously within our socialization, our programming, and it gives us a peek out of the box to see how everybody lives. It helps bring awareness to all the other types, how other people have processed their life, their challenges, and adopted and adapted to the world around them, and adopted characteristics and strategies for coping. And so it really opens us up. And essentially, once we have an understanding of our type, we begin to, and it can be a pretty uncomfortable discovery as we understand some of our maybe more negative characteristics and personality traits and coping mechanisms, fight, flight, freeze, the way we have our attachment to others. And it can be a process of sort of untangling that. But the main core idea or ideal with the Enneagram is that we open up to what's possible for us as individuals and embrace all of our divine qualities, all of our strengths, all of our values. And we begin to focus more upon those, our values, our strengths, our joy, our love, our beauty, our creativity. And we transcend or move beyond that type. And so it's really, the Enneagram is a tool that many therapists use to help individuals process early childhood traumas, to see how and why they developed these strategies that may have been extremely helpful when they were young, but now as adults, these same strategies actually do the opposite. They keep us disconnected from those we love, especially when we're going through challenges. So I don't know if that answered the question fully, but I really encourage you to look into the Enneagram, study it for yourself. You can't really take a test to find your type. You have to do some reading and studying, and then it will be revealed. So thank you, Michael, for your question. And if you have a question for Ask Ali, I'd love it if you post a comment or send me an email at growingedgelive at Gmail, or on Facebook, or wherever you're watching this. You can just send in a question for Ask Ali, and we'll get around to it next week or the week after, and so on. So now we're moving to my next segment, and I'm so extremely excited to have this guest on our show on Growing Edge Live. The name of my guest is Dr. Angelo Pizelo. I've known Dr. Angelo Pizelo for, I think it's 23 years now. I first met him at a ANTN retreat in Lake Arrowhead, California in 2020, when I was graduating with my practitioner credential from Emerson Theological Institute. And Dr. Angelo Pizelo, I'm going, he probably doesn't want me to do this because Angie's so humble and so loving and so doesn't like the attention on himself, but I'm going to do this anyway. Reverend Dr. Angelo Pizelo is a professional educator. He is the founder of Emerson Theological Institute. He is a superintendent emeritus of the Bass Lake Joint Union School District. His academic degrees are a BA, MA, PhD in school administration. His religious degree is Doctor of Religious Studies. Angelo is a Marine Corps veteran, and Angelo became a religious science minister through Religious Science International. And he is the founder of the Positive Living Center of Central California. He is also a husband to Stella, and a father, and a beloved mentor, teacher, dare I say, mystic to so many. Angie, welcome to Growing Edge Live. Oh, can't hear you. Maybe let's see. Angie? Let's see. I can't hear you, but I'm hoping that We can, let's see. Let's see. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit more about Angie, and I will wait to hear if anybody else can hear him. Let's see. Is there a mute button, Angie? Can you see that? Oh, well, Angelo and I have been working together recently, I'd say over the last 5 years, 10 years maybe, as board members on the affiliated New Thought Network board of directors. And Angelo has been the he is the representative from Emerson Theological Institute that has sat on the board of directors of ANTN for decades now. And so the affiliated New Thought Network is a organization that falls under the umbrella of New Thought, along with many other amazing organizations. Like many of you know, if you're here, you know about New Thought. And Angie and friends started Emerson Theological Institute in his car, I think. I remember the story going. And so we get his technical stuff sorted out, there should be a little mute button at the bottom of the page there, little microphone icon. Let's see if you can find that. And I'm going to make a phone call really quickly. Okay. So what shall I say to Angie so he can find what we're needing him to do? Okay. So the settings, Angie, go down to the bottom of the screen and see there's a little key that says settings. Can you click on that? And then click on audio. And then there should be a drop-down menu for the mic. And, oh, okay. All right. Well, why don't we have Angie back another time, and I will continue to share some insights that I have with on our show. Okay. All right, Angie, we're going to have Angie back at another time. Sorry about the technical difficulties that we're having. And I want to sort of take what I've been feeling as I've been preparing to interview and have a discussion with my friend Angie, and sort of go deeper into the things that I've discovered through having a relationship with Angie and Emerson Theological Institute and the affiliated New Thought Network, because those two organizations are intrinsically connected. Emerson Theological Institute and the affiliated New Thought Network. And I know many of the individuals that are part of New Thought Media are members of New Thought, or the New Thought movement, I should say. And there's folk from Unity and CSL and other independent New Thought centers and churches and organizations. And we all have a great affinity for one another. And so the Affiliated New Thought Network is really an organization that invites anyone that is a part of the New Thought movement or anyone in general to be a part of. And Emerson is sort of a sister organization that supports members of Anton and members of the world in getting an education, in getting a degree, and they have many different degree programs, and you can find them at Emerson Theological Institute, I think it's .org, and you can see the different programs that they offer. Angelo was the founder and the dean for many, many years, and he's just passing over his the position that he used to play to John Kahn, Reverend Dr. John Kahn, and he is now the leader of Emerson Theological Institute. And so for those of you that are members of Anton, you'll know that Emerson Theological Institute is our educational arm there. And for me, like I mentioned, I went through my practitioner training in religious science through Emerson Theological Institute 23 years ago now. And then years later, took my ministerial and became a minister and started my own center, independent church here in Utah in 2009. And that church is called the Satya Center. Satya is a Sanskrit word, which loosely translates as higher truth. And so my husband, Michael, and I, we founded the Satya Center after we had a Science of Mind discussion group going for several years. And this discussion group blossomed into our church or our center, Satya. And it's still going. It's been years now. We met in person for many years. And then when the pandemic and the lockdown occurred, we transitioned to doing all of our offerings, not all of them. We do some workshops and classes in person, meditation groups and gatherings, but most of our content, our Sunday, this show, and other counseling and groups and practitioner sessions, we facilitate those online. And so Emerson Theological Institute and Anton have supported us as an independent center, help us feel supported, have a network of peers, of churches, of centers, of independent teachers and authors that we are connected to and we're a part of, which feels very comforting when you're sort of out there on the edge. Here in Utah, I think there's only 2 Science of Mind or religious science churches, CSL Salt Lake, the Salt Lake Center for Spiritual Living, where I was yesterday for a church service with Reverend Cindy, and the Satya Center. So we don't have a lot of New Thought centers or churches or gatherings here in Utah. And so to start a center here with the predominant faith of LDS or Mormonism, it was a pretty brave, bold move. And to have the support of the Affiliated New Thought Network and Emerson Theological Institute, because at the Satya Center, me as the teacher, the founder and the director of the center and the teacher, we were able to have Emerson Theological Institute support us in offering and helping people gain their practitioner credential, ministerial credential, and other degrees, masters and such, doctorate degrees in divinity and consciousness studies. So we really opened up here at the top of Utah the ability for people to get a very good education on religious science and religious studies. So I have Dr. Angelo Pizelo to thank for that, because he really held my hand in developing curricula, in developing a program to support my students, and also support Anton, which is the affiliated New Thought Network, which I'm a part of and have been since 2020. So 23 years, I've seen how these two organizations work together. I've been a part of it. I've seen so many ministers and centers thrive in this beautiful community that has been created through Anton and Emerson. And so I'm going to, we'll go on a break in just a minute or two, and then I'm going to come back and we're going to see where Spirit wants to go next. But I would love to hear what you have to say. I can see people on Facebook are commenting. I'd love to be able to answer any questions that you might have about Anton. I'll try and answer questions about Emerson Theological Institute just based on my own experience with them, but I'm not a part of that organization. But I definitely have served on the board of ANTN. I served as president for a few years, and so I would love to answer any questions or go a little deeper into any comments or discussion that we might want to have about New Thought, the different organizations, where we're headed, how we work together, and anything else. So we're going to take a break right now, I think, and then we'll come back and we'll go a little deeper into exploring Anton, Emerson Theological Institute, and New Thought. So thank you. See you in a bit.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ricky Byers, and what I want you to know is that on the weekend of July 14th, that's July 14th, 15th, and 16th, I'm going to be blowing up Salt Lake City. This is my debut there. I've never been there before. So, Reverend Cindy, look out. We're going to burn it up, baby. God bless. Peace.
Well, I'm back, and I'm so sorry that we had some technical difficulties with with Angie, with Dr. Angelo Pizzello, but I trust that we'll have him back and we'll sort out all of those issues. And so I'm looking at our comments, and if you have any thoughts or ideas or questions, I'd love it if you would post them in the comments. So on the break, by the way, there's some amazing things coming up within the New Thought movement, and just seeing the ad for Ricky Byers coming to Salt Lake this week. Friday, she's having a concert at the Salt Lake Center. And then she's going to be part of the Sunday service and also doing a music symposium. And if you haven't heard if you haven't been to one of the Salt Lake Center's services, I highly recommend it. Their music team is over the top. Rick, Charmaine, Leslie, and oh my gosh, all of the other band members. And they always have a special music guest. And yesterday was amazing. Raj was part of this ensemble of really spicy music. It was incredible. And so the concert, the service, and then the music symposium for those that are musically inclined with Ricky Byers. I mean, what a treat right here close at hand. And you can always go onto the Salt Lake Center spirituallyfree.org and watch their live stream on Sunday. It's a real blessing. There's so many opportunities to watch services on Sunday mornings. I know here on New Thought Media Network, there's every hour, there's just this amazing spiritual content, opportunities to connect with ministers, with speakers, with teachers, with spiritual communities from all over the place that are just on fire with sharing these amazing New Thought spiritual principles with the world. And we're just doing in our little corners of the playground, the world's playground, shining and sharing our light. And you can see the enthusiasm and the way that these people, these ministers, these centers, these teachers are sharing the way that they organize these ideas and principles that are a part of New Thought, and bring their message, their truth into people's everyday lives to help them to sort of get through the chaos, get through the muck, be the light, as someone said on the feed. And so here we are, lost our tech, don't have my special guest. I'm on fire with wanting to share New Thought principles. And I thought, so what can I do? I'll wait and see if any questions come up from the audience. And then there are not a whole bunch of questions coming up. Oh, in faith and oneness, how do we make that happen? Don't quite get that question, but I'll attempt to answer it. And what I thought is maybe I'll answer some of the questions that I have for my guests, just in case we run out of things to say. I always have some backup questions, so we might get to that. Living faith in oneness, how do we make that happen? So how do you make living in faith and oneness happen? What does that mean, and what does it look like? Well, in New Thought, we're taught, and so many spiritual teachings lead to this or allude to this or blatantly outright preach it, that there's only one. There's only one God, one power, one presence, one universal life force energy that is moving, breathing, being. It is the very fiber of who and what we are. We exist in it. It exists within us. We are all individual manifestations of this oneness. So having the awareness of how interconnected, interrelated, interdependent we are brings a sense of, we're not narrowed in, we're not feeling so isolated and separated. Once we understand this fundamental, foundational core teaching or premise of science of mind, of New Thought, of spirituality, we understand that we're not alone. we sort of become more relaxed in our life. We start to sort of take a back seat from the ego. We start to sort of differentiate and see the difference between our soulful self, our essential self, and our ego self, our personality. And so living it with this awareness of our oneness, we develop a faith. And I love that Science of Mind, the textbook, says a faith, philosophy, and a way of life. It's truly, once we have an understanding of the core principles of oneness, of wholeness, of responsibility, of creation, of joy, of beauty, of the power of prayer. Once we have an understanding of these core fundamental basic principles, we then have such we build a consciousness that allows us to have faith in ourselves and have faith in life, because we understand, we start to see the power in organizing our thoughts and having mastery over where we place our attention. So we have mastery of the mind, and we understand that where we focus our attention and what we focus our attention on expands. And so this brings us a greater sense of mastery in our lives. We don't feel so victimized by life just happening. We start to see that everything is happening, and we're a part of this great happening, and we actually can participate in the evolution of our own becoming. We start to own our own becoming by mastering our mind, the quality of our thoughts. We start leaning more towards the positive. We start to catch ourselves when we're moving more towards the negative. And so we start to sort of be able to see, like in the Buddhist philosophy, there's the middle way. We start to see that we can fall towards one side or the other, our soulful self, our spiritual self, the oneness, and then there's the world of personality and the world of form and phenomena, and we begin to see that it's both and it's all going on at the same time. And this gives us a tremendous ability to draw our attention into the now moment, into what's real, and utilize the amazing faculty of our mind to direct our attention to what we want to experience, and start to have greater discipline and greater ability to maintain that frequency, that vibration of what it is we want, whether that's peace, joy, right relationships, greater flow and creativity. We start to be disciplined to think along those lines and give our attention to those things. And that gives us a greater sense of meaning and purpose, greater sense that we're connected to life, that what we're doing actually makes a difference, whether we're just in our own little lives and don't have a lot of interaction with others. Maybe we're an introvert. What you're doing and the energy that you're emitting has an influence, has a result, has an impact in the lives of those around you. Whether you're a big speaker, teacher, author, person in the world that has greater influence, you know that what you do and what you say and how you think and how you feel, that impacts the field. We're all part of this. We're all being affected by each other and by the choices that we make in our own mind and in our own lives. So having this awareness, living wide awake in the field of oneness, gives us a greater sense of meaning and purpose and faith and confidence and trust in ourselves. Okay, so someone What is spiritual living as a way of life? Okay, so spiritual living as a way of life is your ability to, well, there's so many aspects to spiritual living. I'll just share what I do in my daily life as a way of feeling spiritually connected, spiritually online. Um, every morning when I wake up, I come into my meditation room and I do some Kriya Yoga. It's a practice that I was initiated into, Shambhavi, with Sadhguru. I think it was 5-6 years ago now. And so every morning I do my Shambhavi practice, which is a sort of a series of movements, physical yogic asanas to help me relax my body, and then some Kriya Yoga, some breathing techniques that happen in a particular order to help me do the inner clearing, to balance my energies, to balance the life force energy within me so that I can be more present, more available, and be aware of my impact, the impact that I'm having in my world, especially within my relationships. And so that practice is extremely helpful, extremely fundamental to my spiritual living. And then I light candles. I might light some sage, Palo Santo, sweetgrass. I love to play the American flute, Native American flute, and I do some drumming. I may pull a card. I do sit in meditation based on the card that I pulled. And then I have uploads and downloads, and I begin to feel this great connectivity with all of life. And I begin to expand my awareness, and I notice, obviously, all of us in meditation have the opportunity to be faced with our thoughts. It's what meditation does. It stills the body enough for the mind to start presenting us with all of its chatter. And so in that meditative time, and it's not always long, maybe it's 5 minutes, maybe I get lost and it's 20 minutes, and I begin to see the activity of the mind and the incessant negative chatter and opinions that my mind can present, that I know are just the mind. It's just the ego having its moment. And I think it's vitally important for us to understand how our ego influences us. But after time, sitting and hearing and seeing it, it's very boring and repetitive. The quality of thoughts, of opinions that the ego presents isn't very creative, and it's not very interesting. And so I try is not really the right word, but I've become better at just witnessing the egoic chatter. And then after a time, if I'm lucky, if I'm blessed, that mind becomes quiet. And in that place is a spaciousness. And in that space, I feel the presence. I feel God. And it's as though I'm having a conversation where I'm not doing any of the talking. It's the universe just presenting me with its love. It's love to the degree that something magical happens. And I seem to fall in love with reality. And for those moments in meditation, when the egoic mind is still and I'm falling in love with life, it feels blissful, it feels transcendent, it feels that I can move through my world no matter what comes at me, Now, that is sometimes quite fleeting because that doesn't last very long. Those moments come and go within my meditation. Sometimes I never get there. But this kind of practice in the morning, this meditation for 20 minutes, is a way I feel that is fundamental to spiritual living. And then the real test, where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, is if I can maintain that throughout my day. If I can actually live in the principles that I so lovingly believe in, the principles of wholeness and loving kindness and creativity and responsibility and always doing my best. The 4 agreements. Those Don Miguel Ruiz and the 4 agreements have been my guide for many, many years to always do my best, to be impeccable with my word, to not take anything personally and not make assumptions. That is spiritual living. And so it's living out loud these principles is spiritual living, not taking anything personally. It's really difficult, especially when you're, as I am right now, I'm living with my children and my grandchildren. We're co-housing at the moment. And it's extremely difficult and complicated to live with your adult children that have their own children and to co-house, cohabit, have meals together, pay bills together, and all of that. It can be a struggle and a challenge to bump up against my growth edge, which is really has been a challenge for me. And that's something I like to ask my guests. What is your growth edge? Where are you struggling, and how do you deal with that? And so I'll be a little vulnerable here. And just reading does meditation have health benefits? Absolutely reduces stress. And if you have stress in your world, which all of us seem to, then meditation is vitally important. But getting back to this growth edge, I've had my entire life, and I've learned this through me studying the Enneagram and my type. I'm a type 4, self-preservation, subtype 4, with a 5 wing, for those of you that are interested in the Enneagram. And a lot of my growth edge has been around abandonment, people leaving, not trusting those around me, my family members. And so I have developed over the years a strategy of putting up a wall, building a wall around my heart, and sort of keeping people at a distance as a unconscious strategy to be safe, to maintain safety, so that I won't get too vulnerable and too dependent on you, and then you may leave. And so when someone challenges me, especially a loved one within my family, this has happened several times, embarrassingly, where someone has called me out on what I do, which has become very quiet. I withdraw or I hide. I come up with all kinds of excuses in my mind why it's best that I just excuse myself, that I have nothing to add to the conversation. It's probably better that I withdraw myself so that I'm not causing any more disturbance. Because as a little one, I had the belief that I was a problem. And so in order not to put out anybody, my parents, I would retreat and hide. Oh my God, well, that doesn't work so well with your children. I can't retreat and I can't hide. But let me tell you, my ego self, that little wounded girl that's become so clear in studying the Enneagram, she's still in there. I thought I had dealt with this in my practitioner training, all the work that I did then in self-discovery and shining the light of awareness on on our past, all the things that we did in class together. Well, nothing had really prepared me for the work I discovered, what I discovered doing the work of the Enneagram. And so I realized that I'm still up to these shenanigans of closing my heart, of putting up a wall, of isolating, of coming up with all kinds of good reasons why I don't want to put anybody else out. And so I've been bumping up against this growth edge, and I'm developing new strategies. Another thing about spiritual living, if you've got this stuff going on that you haven't dealt with, that you think you've dealt with, but you haven't. Last year, I hired a therapist. I've been working on these issues that came up during my Enneagram studies, my closing my heart, my withdrawing, my the way I connect with people, the way I stay safe, and all of this. And so I have been doing some things that have really been pushing me to stay engaged, because really that's what I want. I want to stay engaged with my loved ones. I want to keep my heart open. I want them to know that I love them. I want to be able to bring my most spiritually mature, authentic self into every relationship. And that's a challenge for me, especially with these key, very close family relationships. So I maintain eye contact. I don't withdraw. I don't listen to that ego mind that says, you don't have to put up with this. You can go down into your room and hide or read a book or go do a meditation or whatever excuse my ego will present to me why it's a good idea to leave. I don't, I stay. And I've said this a couple of times in challenging conversations. I don't really know what to say at the moment, but I really want to participate in this conversation. Maybe it could happen at a later date, maybe tomorrow. I'm going to take time to really process through what you've said. I'm going to look at this and I'm feeling some uncomfortable feelings, and I'm really wanting to work through these for myself, because my biggest intention, my biggest desire is that we connect, that we have a healthy relationship, and that we create something beautiful together. And so that's what I want to say, and that's what I've been attempting to say, maybe not in those exact words, with my family members as I've been triggered. And so spiritual living is really about noticing where we're triggered and keeping our heart open, leaning forward, even when it's difficult, taking responsibility for how we show up in the world, taking responsibility for the quality of our thoughts. And I think the main thing, and a couple of weeks ago, Robert was my guest, and he presented a spiritual practice at the segment of Growing Edge Live with Ali show at the end, where I asked my guests to share a spiritual practice, and he shared visioning. And so for me, visioning is something that we are taught in Centers for Spiritual Living and in Anton. We're taught visioning as a way of harnessing our creative energy, identifying who we want to be and what we want to experience in the future, what spirit's idea of itself as our lives, as we start to open up to the full dimension of our being. We start to get in touch with our intuition. We start to allow the grace of God to flow through us. And so visioning is a great strategy, a great tool, a great process that we can participate in our lives daily, or within groups or within organizations, to help us get clear on who we're becoming, on what we want to experience. So for me, having an idea of my personal vision, of who I want to be, of what I want to experience moving forward, builds the consciousness for that very thing, for that very persona, for that very experience, for that goal, that dream. that idea. And so once I have that in my mind, once I meditate on it, once it starts to grow roots, once it starts to grow wings, then that vision then is something that I use day in, day out, sometimes several times during the day. I bring it to mind. I close my eyes in meditation. I bring my vision, my ideas, my thoughts on board, online, and I start to allow it to morph and change and grow. And this vision starts to pull me forward, because Michael Beckwith, who presents the life visioning process, he says that unless we have a vision pulling us forward, we have a tendency just to be pushed by our pain of struggle, our pain of wanting, our pain of desiring, our pain of discontent, our pain of anger, our pain of whatever. This tends to be that thing that pushes us forward, and then we don't seem to be ever to get to where we want to be. So the visioning, having a vision, is integral to spiritual living. So just to kind of recap: meditation, kriya, yoga, mindfulness, being aware of our emotions as they come up, giving them time, processing through our feelings and emotions with therapists, having a practitioner, a prayer partner to be able to talk about the principles and practices that support us in our everyday life. All of these things aid us in spiritual living. Connecting with others, watching things like this, being a part of New Thought Media Network, finding others that want to grow and learn, take a course, there's so many ways to live a spiritual life. And by the way, you can't not live a spiritual life. We're all doing it. It's just the nature of reality. We somehow compartmentalize spiritual living as something different than what we're doing right now. We're all doing it. We're all doing it the best we can. We all have the ability to share and shine our light in magnificent ways. And so it's really about developing the eyes to see, the ears to hear, and the heart to receive. And that's what all of these practices that I've shared with you today, that's what it does. It opens our eyes to see beyond the visible. It opens our ears to be able to hear beyond the audible. And what that really means is that we don't just get sucked into reality, to the phenomenal world, but we see beyond that. We see how we're all connected, we're all one, and we're all in this creative, wonderful, growing edge opportunity together with our hearts wide open. We're creating something beautiful. That's what spiritual living is. It's being aware of your own ability to fall in love with yourself, to fall in love with life, with every other being on this world. And that love is what makes the world go round. That love is going to heal us and bring us together as never before. So I want to say thank you for being here. Next week, join me. I'm going to have Reverend David Alt as our guest here on Growing Edge Live. And so submit your questions, and I'll see you next week. Peace and blessings to you. Namaste. Mwah.